Each morning, when we wake up, we sense a familiar self. The one who has felt sadness and joy, who has loved, been hurt, learned, and grown. That self appears continuous, consistent, and real. But the truth is, it is not as fixed as we believe. Beneath the layer of ordinary awareness, where we know what we are thinking and what we are doing, there flows a deeper stream, one that most of us never truly recognize. It is not the place of memories we can recall, nor the thoughts that arise in the present. It is something deeper, a realm where every impression, every psychological habit, every trace of experience is recorded without our knowing. Have you ever reacted impulsively, become angry without understanding why? Or felt affection for someone at first sight, without any clear reason? These reactions do not come from the present moment. They are triggered from that hidden depth within the storehouse where all the imprints of the past are kept. Not only memories you can bring to mind, but perhaps an endless chain of experiences from lifetimes beyond this one. This hidden depth is known as Ālaya-vijñāna, the eighth consciousness, also called the storehouse consciousness. It is the vast reservoir that holds every seed of habit, every tendency, every karmic force. It is the very foundation of the inner world you are living in. Like a silent current beneath the surface of the ocean, it gives rise to every wave of thought, feeling, or perception that you call yourself. But here's the point. If you do not see it, if you do not recognize it, you will continue living under the illusion that you are the one choosing. When in reality, Ālaya the storehouse is choosing for you in ways you cannot see. And unless this depth is illuminated, there is no real freedom. This reflection is not a lesson in philosophy. It is an encounter with the deepest roots of the mind. When that root is seen, the whole psychological world begins to transform. Life is no longer lived as a personal self with a private history. Instead, awakening dawns into another dimension where what you call me is revealed as nothing more than a ripple on an infinite ocean. The storehouse consciousness is not a part of your mind that you can easily notice in daily life. It is not the place where you think, remember, or feel in the usual sense. Rather, it is the unseen ground quietly operating behind all experience. It does not show itself in form, yet it is present in every single moment. Like the hidden roots beneath the soil that nourish the entire tree, it is the deepest foundation of the mind holding all the seeds of karma, habits, tendencies, and subconscious impressions. The word Ālaya in Sanskrit means a place of keeping, a dwelling, a refuge. It is called storehouse, not only because it preserves every seed, but also because it remains hidden from ordinary awareness. It is the receiver, the container, and the generator of all mental phenomena. But most importantly, it is the ground of continuity. The reason life flows on, moment after moment, lifetime after lifetime. To understand Ālaya, one must see the entire structure of consciousness as described in Yogacara Buddhism, or the study of mind only. According to this teaching, the mind is not one uniform block. Instead, it is a dynamic system of 8 distinct forms of consciousness, each with its own depth and function. The first 6 are easy to recognize as they operate in daily life. Eye consciousness, Ālaya-vijñāna, the act of seeing. Ear consciousness, Shrotra-vijñāna, the act of hearing. Nose consciousness, Ghṛana-vijñāna, the act of smelling. Tongue consciousness, Jiva-vijñāna, the act of tasting. Body consciousness, Kaya-vijñāna, the act of touching. Mind consciousness, Mano-vijñāna, the act of thinking, reasoning, and distinguishing. These 6 are like bubbles on the surface of water, constantly changing, fragile, and impermanent. They are the part of mind most of us mistake for the whole of ourselves. But beyond them lies the 7th consciousness Manas, and beneath that, the 8th Ālaya, the silent depth, the vast storehouse, the true foundation of all that we call life and self. There is a deeper layer of consciousness, where the mind clings to an imagined self. This is the 7th consciousness, Manas. It takes the storehouse, Ālaya, as me, as mine. And from this attachment arises endless disturbance. Unlike the 6 sensory consciousnesses that observe objects outside, Manas does not look outward. It constantly turns inward, grasping tightly at what it believes to be the self, though this self has no real form, no substance. And deeper still, beyond even Manas, lies Ālaya-vijñāna, the storehouse consciousness. This is not something you can see with your eyes, or reach by ordinary reasoning. It does not directly produce thoughts, feelings, or perceptions. Yet it is the very root from which they all spring. Every seed ever planted. From a moment of anger, a spark of joy, an addictive habit, or even the aspiration to walk a spiritual path. All of these are stored here. They remain dormant, like seeds sleeping in the soil. And when the right conditions appear, they awaken, sprouting as thoughts, emotions, or actions. Ālaya is like a vast reservoir of mental energy, continuously receiving new seeds from our present actions, while at the same time bringing old seeds back to the surface, appearing as automatic reactions. And in this way, habits and karma take shape. We find ourselves repeating the same patterns, living the same suffering, mistaking it all as just the way I am. What makes Ālaya remarkable is that it never stops. Not even in deep sleep, not in unconsciousness, not when all ordinary awareness falls silent. It continues as the subtle ground, the silent current that sustains the continuity of life. And when the body dissolves, when the usual functions of consciousness cease, what has been stored in Ālaya remains. It endures as a hidden stream of energy, carrying every trace that has been formed before. You may call it a new life, or simply the continuation of deep karmic tendencies. But one thing is undeniable. Whatever has not yet been seen clearly continues to operate, unceasing, needing no controller, never pausing just because you are unaware of it. For this reason, Ālaya is not a soul. It is not an eternal self. It is not an unchanging essence. It is a stream, a dynamic flow of gathered energies, shaping what we call I. But that I is constantly shifting, constantly conditioned, never a separate, independent entity. To understand Ālaya is to see that human beings are not living from true freedom. We are being led, driven by the weight of past impressions, by karmic currents stored within us. But knowing the structure alone is not enough. If we want to truly step out of these programmed loops, we must look deeper. We must understand how karma itself is formed, how it is stored, and how it continues within the storehouse. In the teachings of Yogacara, every act, whether wholesome or unwholesome, whether intentional or unconscious, leaves a subtle imprint. This imprint is called a seed, or Bīja. It is not a memory in the way you usually recall something. It has no shape, no image. It is a latent potential, waiting silently in the storehouse, until the right conditions bring it to fruit. Ālaya does not choose, does not judge, does not decide between good or bad. It receives everything, it stores everything, without distinction, like a neutral container. But precisely because of this neutrality, it becomes the unseen foundation for an entire human life. A person who easily falls into anger, for example, is not angry because they simply chose to be. It is because within them are seeds of anger long accumulated. When circumstances resemble those of the past, the seeds stir, they erupt, without asking your permission, without giving you time to think. And suddenly you react, like a machine repeating its code. Not because Ālaya forces you, but because you have never truly seen this process. And as long as it is unseen, the cycle continues. It feels like freedom, but in reality, it is unconscious repetition. This stream does not stop at the present life. When conditions change, when the body breaks down, the six sense consciousnesses dissolve. Even manas, the ego consciousness, falls silent. But Ālaya remains, carrying the entire store of karmic tendencies. And if new conditions arise, they manifest again as another life, another continuum of mind and habit. Not because a fixed soul has traveled, but because what has not yet been seen clearly flows on. Life is still unfolding, moment after moment. There is no one reincarnating, yet repetition continues. As long as ignorance remains unbroken, rebirth then is not a soul, jumping from one body to another. It is simply the reappearance of seeds. Whenever conditions arise, following the natural law of cause and effect, from a single look filled with contempt, to the smallest gesture of attachment, to a wholesome thought that suddenly shines forth, none of these vanish. Each leaves a trace, and that trace does not disappear, does not fall into oblivion. It sinks silently into the depths, becoming an invisible current that shapes the stream of life to come, whether in this very lifetime or in the next moment. But here is something crucial to see clearly. Karma is not fixed. Even though Ālaya holds countless seeds from the past, each present moment remains a point of freedom. A different way of seeing, a new action, a genuine release. All of these are fresh seeds being planted right now, and they can change the entire current within. The storehouse is not a closed prison. It can also become fertile soil for renewal, if one lives with awareness and stops feeding the unwholesome seeds. With this understanding, we no longer see karma as a cruel fate, nor rebirth as some mystical chain of souls. Rebirth truly happens in daily life, here and now. Every time you fail to see your own reaction, every time you repeat an old habit and mistake it for your true nature, every time you say, "This is just who I am," rebirth is already occurring. And in that very seeing that every reaction is driven by habit, that the self is only a heap of accumulations, a door begins to open, a way out of the loop. Thus, to understand Ālaya is not merely to understand a psychological layer. It is to see directly into the root of karma, into the root of reaction, into the root of what you call I. But to truly transform the stream of karma, we cannot stop at the storehouse alone. For standing right at the threshold of Ālaya is another, more subtle force, silently guarding the entire structure. This is manas, the seventh consciousness. It is manas that ceaselessly builds the sense of self, ensuring that the illusion of I never cracks. If Ālaya is the place where all karmic seeds are stored, then manas is the gateway, the filter through which every inner experience must pass before reaching conscious awareness. In the Yogacara system of 8 consciousnesses, manas stands between the 6th consciousness mind and the 8th Ālaya. Its role is not to process information from the senses, nor to engage in reasoning and thought like the mind. Instead, its function is singular: to turn inward, to cling tightly to one thing, the sense of I. The key to understanding manas is the word self-grasping. Not self-grasping as a philosophical theory, but as a deeply rooted feeling. The unquestioned sense that there is a real me behind everything. A fixed center, standing behind thoughts, emotions, and actions. This feeling does not come from logic. It is not created by language. It exists as a primal prejudice, an ancient habit so deep that we don't even realize it is there. Manas does not look at the outer world. It does not function through the senses. It gazes in one direction only, back toward Ālaya. And it mistakes the storehouse to be me. Because of this identification, manas becomes the invisible guard at the gate, always standing between mind and storehouse, shaping the way we experience ourselves, though we never notice it. So the I you feel so strongly, the center you take for granted, is not Ālaya itself, but the projection of manas, forever holding on to the illusion of a self. It is neither the body nor the stream of thoughts. Rather, it is a subtle feeling, constructed by manas so deeply rooted that it appears in every single moment of the mind. Think about it. All our activities, worrying for ourselves, defending when hurt, feeling proud when praised, or afraid when judged, all share the same root, the grasping at self, erected by manas. What makes manas so tricky is its subtlety. It is not noisy like consciousness, nor clear like perception. It is more like a habit, a deep-rooted habit of placing ourselves at the center. From that habit, endless comparisons arise, close or distant, gain or loss, success or failure, better or worse. Now, these distinctions by themselves are not bad, but when they are born from the grasping at self, they become the soil for greed, anger, ignorance, and all forms of suffering. Here, we must be very clear. Manas does not create things. It creates a way of seeing things through the lens of ego. So something perfectly ordinary, when filtered through manas, suddenly becomes about me, something that belongs to me, threatens me, or benefits me. And just like that, the mind cannot rest in reality. It keeps running after its own interpretations, defending or manipulating the image of I. That's why the image of manas as a gatekeeper is so accurate. It doesn't let the clear seeing of the Ālaya-vijñāna, the storehouse consciousness, shine through, nor does it allow the conscious mind to meet the Ālaya without ego. Every communication between the layers of mind is stained by self-grasping. Manas is like a foggy glass. Everything seen through it is distorted. It is like a dream where the dreamer doesn't know they're dreaming. Only when they awaken Do they realize all the struggles, all the suffering inside that dream were never real? This is why, on the path of transforming consciousness, recognizing manas is a turning point. If we fail to see its workings, then no matter how wholesome our practice may appear, it easily falls into arrogance, attachment to methods, or the subtle inflation of the ego. But if we can see manas, clearly see that mind which is grasping I, then we can step back. We can observe the grasping itself without being absorbed by it. That is the true beginning of selflessness. Manas does not need to be destroyed. It is simply a habit to be seen, understood, and released. And in that release, there is no longer someone who releases. When the light of awareness shines upon manas, its grip on the alaya begins to crack. And when no one is left to cling to self, the alaya is no longer bound by identity. At that moment, all 8 consciousnesses begin to transform, and the stream of mind returns to its natural clarity, just as it always was. But here lies another danger. Right at that point, a new illusion can arise. One might take Ālaya-vijñāna to be some eternal essence, a hidden soul dwelling within us. If this subtle difference is not seen clearly, we may abandon the coarse ego, only to carry with us a subtler, more enduring, more dangerous form of ego, the clinging to an invisible center. This is the final anchor of the self, the last refuge of ego, and it too must be seen all the way through. In many religions and belief systems, people speak of an immortal soul, an eternal spiritual entity that survives forever as the core of me. When they hear about Ālaya-vijñāna, some may mistake it for the same thing. Why? Because it runs so deep, so foundational, and seems to accompany us across lifetimes. Yet the difference between alaya and the soul is absolute. First of all, alaya is not stable or permanent. It is not an independent entity. It does not exist on its own, nor does it stand outside phenomena to control or observe. Alaya is a continuous stream of seeds, always in motion, always being added to and released in each moment, depending on actions, intentions, and circumstances. This is very different from the idea of a soul, imagined as a fixed point at the center of identity. Ālaya-vijñāna is not something you have. It is simply the ongoing result of the way you have lived. You don't carry the Ālaya-vijñāna with you. You are alaya, in the sense that you are the totality of karmic imprints that have been accumulated. Second, alaya operates under the principle of dependent origination. It does not exist by itself. It does not arise on its own. It does not stand apart. It only comes into being when the right conditions are present, when there is a body, when the 6 senses are functioning, when the phenomenal world is here, and when the process of interaction between sense organs, objects, and consciousness is in motion. When those conditions dissolve, alaya does not die like the body, nor is it immortal like a soul. It is simply a stream of potential that continues to flow, seeking another suitable condition in which to reappear. This is how Buddhism explains rebirth continuity without a permanent self being transferred, a continuation but not a transmission of identity. Most importantly, alaya is without self. Even though it stores countless seeds, forming a distinct stream for each individual, in itself there is no owner, no subject. The records within alaya are not anyone's property. They are simply phenomena arising and ceasing, impermanent, appearing and disappearing. When conditions are gone, they dissolve, just like all other conditioned dharmas. Therefore, clinging to alaya as a true essence is a serious mistake, a very subtle form of self-grasping. Even if a practitioner has let go of body, feelings, and thoughts, this refined attachment to some so-called true self remains. And as long as that last bit of clinging is there, complete liberation cannot happen. On the other hand, precisely because alaya is not fixed, not an eternal entity, it can be transformed. If it were an immutable soul, then transforming karma, or practicing toward realization, would be meaningless. But since alaya is only a flow of imprints, when you change your way of seeing, your behavior, your way of living, then the seeds being planted also change. Over time, as those new seeds accumulate, the entire storehouse gradually becomes purified, and eventually, when nothing more is deposited, alaya ceases to be a warehouse of karma. It becomes the vast and luminous wisdom called Great Mirror Wisdom. Understood this way, we see clearly. The concept of soul is an invention to reinforce ego. Alaya, by contrast, is a non-personal process, without self. The soul gives people something to cling to, a permanent identity. Alaya, when seen clearly, leads the practitioner to release even the idea of I. And that is the ultimate difference between Buddhism and many other systems of belief. Right view of Ālaya not only prevents us from falling into the wrong idea of an eternal soul, but also opens the gate of liberation. No longer I to carry karma, no longer me to be bound. Only the vast, empty flow of knowing, dissolving into reality as it island. Now, if Ālaya is the storehouse of all karmic seeds, then it's obvious, to be free from suffering and the cycle of rebirth, you cannot stop at outer behavior alone. Moral discipline, lifestyle changes, and thought control are necessary, yes, but they work only on the surface. The root still lies deep in the eighth consciousness, where imprints from countless lifetimes are stored. To transform at the root, you must enter a deeper journey, shining the light of awareness directly into Ālaya, where ignorance has lodged for the longest time. This process is not as simple as wiping clean or erasing seeds. There is no broom sweeping away karma. Transforming Ālaya is a subtle operation. It requires a wisdom that is no longer entangled in dualities beyond good and bad, right and wrong, beyond ordinary judgment. Because any judgment from the dualistic mind is still the activity of the surface consciousness, it belongs to the cycle of samsara and cannot touch the depth of the storehouse. When you meditate in the true way, without striving, without forcing, without trying to eliminate but simply resting in vast awareness and total letting go, then gradually, the light of pure knowing begins to seep down into the deeper layers of mind. At that point, suppressed seeds, unconscious reactions, hidden cravings, all start to rise to the surface, not to be suppressed again, not to be destroyed, but simply to be seen without reacting, without conclusions. It is this clear, unconditional seeing, this seeing without a seer, that has the power to empty out the storehouse. Like sunlight shining into a dark cave, you don't need to fight the darkness. Once the light is present, darkness naturally fades. In the same way, when luminous wisdom reaches the seeds, they lose their ground to arise. And this silent transformation is how Ālaya-vijñāna itself becomes transparent, turning from a store of karmic seeds into the purest ground of freedom. At the deepest level, when the seeds in the storehouse no longer find soil to take root, they do not need to be destroyed by force. They simply dissolve in the presence of pure awareness. This state is called the transformation of consciousness into wisdom, specifically, the transformation of the Ālaya-vijñāna into the great mirror wisdom. It is a wisdom as clear and vast as a mirror, reflecting all things without clinging to any of them. And this is not a state of blankness or ignorance. It is a knowing that is complete yet without choosing, without dividing, without creating a self. It is the very ground of liberation. Because at this stage, the conditions that once fueled karmic seeds are no longer able to operate. Here, you are no longer a practitioner. Every identity, every goal, every idea of achievement has dissolved. What remains is a pure stream of knowing without a name, without roots, without boundaries, yet fully alive in the midst of life. In that place, karma no longer binds. Consciousness no longer turns. And samsara ends not because someone has stepped out of the cycle, but because there was never truly anyone inside it. It was only the play of the eight consciousnesses, now seen through completely. And in that seeing, there is nothing left that needs liberation. Having gone through the entire structure of the eight consciousnesses from the ordinary senses to the deepest layers like Manas and Ālaya, a question naturally arises. Perhaps the most important question of all. Who, then, is the one living this life? Who is the one hearing, thinking, feeling? Who is practicing, suffering, seeking liberation? If I am not the body because the body changes daily and eventually disintegrates, if I am not thoughts because ideas come and go like clouds in the sky, never lasting for long, if I am not emotions because joy and sorrow are only passing states, then could I be consciousness itself? But as we've seen, consciousness is also just one of the eight arising with conditions, changing with its objects, never independent. Even if I dig deeper into Ālaya, the storehouse of all seeds, the foundation of psychological activity, can I say, that is me? No, because Ālaya has no fixed essence. It is always shifting with habits and conditions. It has no self, no will of its own. It is not a subject, not a controller. It is simply the stream of karmic energy continuing without an owner. So then, who is the seer? Or more accurately, what is it that sees? In the light of wisdom, when the entire movement of mind is seen surface to depth, you discover something strange, yet absolutely clear. There is no someone who sees. There is no entity behind experience. No soul, No center, no hidden subject pulling the strings. There is only seeing, only knowing. A pure awareness, functioning transparent, selfless, without attachment. When that seeing is no longer identified with any of the consciousnesses, not with ordinary awareness, not with manas, not with alaya, then it no longer belongs to the psychological system at all. It becomes what is called the nature of seeing, or the nature of knowing. Unconditioned, unborn, undying, neither coming nor going. Not I know, but simply knowing without a knower. Not I see, but seeing without a seer. This is not a philosophical idea. This is the root experience of awakening. When you are no longer swept up by the ripples on the surface of the mind's lake, even when thoughts arise, you are not carried away. Even when emotions surge, you are not identified. Even when karmic patterns echo up from Ālaya and turn into action, you can see them clearly, without being ruled by them. In that space of open awareness, the nature of knowing reveals itself free, formless, without ego, yet full, deep, and alive. From here, you no longer struggle to overcome Ālaya by suppressing or forcing transformation. Instead, you stand within the undivided knowing, allowing Ālaya to operate as it does, as part of the impermanent world of birth and death. And in this effortless seeing, everything is already free. It's no longer me, no longer mine. That doesn't mean we eliminate the mind's functions. It simply means we no longer cling to them as something truly ours. When the clinging ends, the functions continue, but they no longer bind. Karma still unfolds, but there is no longer anyone who carries it. The world still turns, but there is no center around which it must revolve. And from that very openness, a new kind of life quietly begins. Awake without needing to idealize it. Alive without needing to achieve it. Free without needing to escape. There is no longer a goal to chase. No longer a self to defend. No longer a fear to hold, because the one who feared was never real to begin with. This is the path we are walking together with you. Not to lead you into some lofty knowledge. Not to build another layer of spiritual identity. But simply to open one layer of seeing after another until, at some point, you can recognize directly. No one is walking here. There is only pure seeing, shining through the whole movement of life. And in that seeing, truth reveals itself. You don't need to believe. You don't need to memorize the teachings of the 8 consciousnesses. If, even once in your life, you pause, if you look deeply into yourself, and see that what you call me is only a stream of reactions passing by, then in that very moment, pure awareness is already here. And if something in these words has touched a spark within you, remember, that light did not come from us. It is your own luminous nature quietly showing itself. Thank you for being here with us. May you and your family be healthy, peaceful, and well.